I was particularly interested in chatting with members of the church because over listening to their music for many years and seeing them live in concert, I really became aware of the integrity with which they pursue their craft and the deep understanding of rock and roll history that all members of the band share. This week I chatted with Marty Willson-Piper as he was sitting in the In Deep Music Archive in Cornwall in England. The In Deep Music Archive is an initiative of Marty Willson-Piper and his wife Tiari, and it is based on the extensive record collection that Marty has been building over decades. And it's a real service to the world because it's looking like the nucleus of something that might grow and expand into a real hub of musical activity and knowledge. So let's listen to Marty Willson-Piper talking about the In Deep Music Archive. I'm definitely keen to chat to you because you've got such a great knowledge of musical history, and I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about the archive project that you've set up.
It's in Cornwall. Yeah, it's like in the southwest, kind of a strange mystical place on the far bottom left-hand side of England, where lots of strange histories have happened. With the Romans never conquered it. They've always been a law unto themselves. It's almost like another country. It's almost like Wales, like a different country.
Wow.
With its own language, and it sort of has lots of sacred sites, and it's kind of a interesting place, quite different to the rest of England. But so it seems like a good place to have a music archive and a recording studio.
Is it primarily your record collection that started this?
Yeah, sure. Well, that's what it is. It's completely my record collection, but it's been a record collection that I've collected records since the 60s, you know. So I have a really huge collection of records from then, and still have all the records I bought when I was a kid, you know. So I'm one of those people actually managed to hang on to his record collection through, you know, moving around from house to house as a teenager and country to country as a band member, and I managed to not sell my record collection when CDs came and bamboozled everybody with their technological trickery, you know. So I didn't. I was always one for buying all formats of music: vinyl, CD, cassettes, 8-track cartridges, 7-inch singles, 12-inch singles. I always just kind of like saw something I liked. It didn't really matter what format it was on. I always bought it. I always really liked the vinyl because it was obviously a lovely thing to aesthetically. Yeah, so it's just a collection that's built up over 50 years, basically.
And also it's now incorporated into a recording studio and sort of a little consultancy.
Yeah, well, the idea is that, you know, we do anything here that you want, really, including waiting around for us to make our own music for you to listen to. You know, we do all kinds of things here. We have a music library, we have a management company, we have a recording studio, we have individual artists. Tiari and I work together. Tiari makes records. Dare and I work together. Dare makes records. Dare produces records. I make records. I'm in other bands. I give somebody a guitar lesson. You know, it's just like anything to do with music. And I collect music books and anything to do with music, really. Instruments, books, records, you know, radios, old radios, turntables, you know, speakers. Just anybody's got something that they don't want that's kind of cool, then they can dump it on me.
So the day-to-day work that you are doing when you're listening to the albums, are you're literally cataloguing, and are you writing anything about each record, or what is the sort of the long-term process of archiving the albums?
Well, you know, in a perfect world, when I had 100 interns cataloguing the whole collection and writing down all the information, then we would, you know, just try and collect all the missing records from the archive, and we'd have to buy a few warehouses and alphabetize them and make it into a beautiful musical library for posterity. But I kind of like I sort of tend to collect. I sort of have my own taste within my own record collection. You know, I sort of like have a. I quite happily go and buy something of historical interest for the collection. It's not. I don't just buy things that are my actual total taste. You know, I might go and buy. You know, I might go buy a. I might go and buy a Tears for Fears album. You know, but I'm not really into Tears for Fears. But I might go buy a Cranberries album. I'm not really into the Cranberries. But, you know, there's lots of things like that, you know. I might go and buy a, you know, Bon Iver album, I suppose, or a Fleet Foxes record, you know. I'm not really into Fleet Foxes, but I kind of like, if I can get a copy of the Fleet Foxes record for the archive, I think of it as a good thing.
Well, I think it's very exciting for the future, and I'm sure other folks will get a chance to contribute and help to build this in the coming decades.
That's what happens. People send me records all the time. Anybody wants to send me records, they should get onto the Facebook site. Well, we're trying to build a website, but they should get onto the Facebook site and just get in touch. But the thing is, people send me records all the time. Record company people, fans, just people who know about the archive and want to give me records, and they just send me things, you know. And it's not about. Sometimes people send me records which are worth loads of money, and it's like, go great, fantastic, and we sort of file them away and love them. We don't sell them; we love them, file them away, and admire them when they're either on the turntable or in shelf, you know. So we collect CDs and cassettes and vinyl and 8-track cartridges and 78s and absolutely everything by everybody. And if we run out of room, we've got a storehouse, and we'd put things in a storehouse till we figured out what to do. I mean, I have my cassettes in the storehouse because they won't fit in the main archive room at the moment. I have to figure out what to do about that. But we're quite happy to get cassettes or books about music, you know, biographies, encyclopedias, autobiographies. Anything to do with music, please send it to the Indie Music Archive, and we will lovingly appreciate it. Our hands, our eyes, and our ears.
I will certainly be spreading news of this to all my contacts in Canada. This is, really, really brilliant project.
Yeah, I mean, there's loads of Canadian records I don't have. You know, I mean, I've got like lots of Neil Young records, and I mean, I don't have all the Veronique Sanson records, for example. You know, and I don't have, I've got most of the Buffy Santamarie records, but not all of them. I don't have Presto by Rush.
Yeah.
You know.
We'll spread the word and see what we can do about that. It looks, I mean, in this crazy times, and everything's all complicated now with the music world, but I think purists tend to find each other eventually, people who really care, and joining together is really great.
Sure, yeah. And it's great in here because people come in here and they just fall in love in here. We'd like to do at some point, we'd like people to come here and record with us, you know. I mean, if somebody, you know, the problem is that people don't have lots of money these days. I guess some people do. So if there's anybody out there that wants to come and spend a month in Cornwall and make a record with me and Dare and come and hang in the archive, and I mean, obviously they're going to have to pay for it, then, you know, get in touch.
This is Stranded, the Australian-Canadian Music Show, and part 3 of the Stranded special on the church. And this week we're talking with guitarist Marty Willson-Piper. You just heard Marty talk about the In Deep Music Archive, a very interesting project that he has set up in Cornwall, England. And you can find out more information about that project by going to the In Deep Music Archive page on Facebook. In the next part of the interview, I asked Marty about his connection to Scandinavia and his ideas on music education. And I've been curious too about your connection with Scandinavia. How did that initially come about?
Yeah, I have a daughter. I have a 22-year-old daughter in Sweden, in Stockholm. But I actually have a project I'm working on in Stockholm at the moment, which I've written 20 songs with another Swedish musician who's from quite a well-known band there called the Weeping Willows. And we're making a record in March, April next year in Stockholm. So yeah, the Stockholm connection is strong, and we're always getting over there and doing something as well.
I actually was speaking to some Canadian musicians, and they're sort of talking about how the government here and the powers that be don't support music education much. And then someone was saying in Sweden it's actually quite the opposite, that it's a bigger part of the social fabric. Have you really noticed that the quality of music because of the education?
Well, you know, it's a funny thing, isn't it? I mean, often government-supported music projects don't add up to the Velvet Underground. But on the other hand, Sweden is a small country, 8.5 million people, and it's come up with a whole lot of great bands from, talking about sort of independent bands like, Soundtrack of Our Lives and, the Cardigans and, more sort of crazy psych bands like Dungen, and lots of really great bands come from Sweden, but they're always were very supportive of youth art and youth music projects. I think they are in Holland as well. Well, as in England, nobody's got any money, so everybody's not used to the system helping them out that much. But at the same time, as Alan, what's it said from what's they called? Oh God, what's his name? Alan McGee. As Alan McGee said from Creation Records, you can't push people off the dole and say they're not working when they're drawing dole money and trying to be a musician, because that's the time that people who are going to be successful musicians of the future get the time to learn to be a musician and write songs and be a creative person. So there's a whole kind of controversy about that. I mean, if you're not going to support your musicians or your artists, and they want to be musicians and artists and want to be serious about it, then you've got to support them. Or, if they're on the dole, you can't push them into a normal, in inverted commas, job and stop giving them the time to be creative.
Exactly. It's cause and effect.
That's how I see it. But you've got to be dedicated to make it in music, I suppose. I don't know. Well, anyway, these days, who knows how it works?
Yeah, I often thought that in the 80s in Australia, the underground music, there was so much good music that tended to come out at those times, and from what I hear, the dole was a little easier to get back then, and people really could, and I think there was a lot of quality there that people didn't even realise at the time.
Well, I tell you what, a lot of people who made great music in Australia in the 80s were on the dole. Bands like the Lighthouse Keepers. Yeah,
and bands, I think, like the B Suburban, bands like that.
Yeah.
And just one last thing I just wanted to ask as well. When I was backstage at your gig in Seattle last year, it was really great. You were chatting with a gentleman and his kids there about the guitar, and you were very enthusiastic about encouraging these young guys to play, and wondered if you could sort of, I don't know if you could remember what you said, but sort of your theory around learning music, and you were very encouraging around not worrying too much about getting every little thing right, but just having a go. And
well, you know what? There's more than one way to skin a cat, and one way to learn to play guitar is to study books. Another way to learn to play guitar is pick it up and start hitting it. The soul is in your fingers, so you have to learn how to translate the sounds into your head into sounds on your guitar, and you have to channel channel your ideas through your fingers into the instrument. So, you know what? You don't have to be a good guitarist to be a good guitarist. This is the thing, and this might sound like, see if you can understand this. You can be a great guitarist and be really, really bad. And you can be a really bad guitarist and be really, really great. So, and you know what? People can be either of those two extremes, or they can be somewhere in between. And as long as they are communicating the creativity and getting it across, even if it's just getting even if it's just convincing themselves that they've done something good, then that's a good thing. You know, I think you have to encourage people to be creative and to think that they can achieve something without any pressure. I mean, if that's the way that you want to go and get into learning scales and being fast and, you know, being a master of your instrument, then that's cool too. But if you want to sort of like play a few chords and say something about what's going on in the world, then you can do that too. You know, it's like Neil Young is actually a perfect example. Neil Young's one of my favourite guitar players. You know, I mean, he's no Eddie Van Halen, but, you know, Eddie Van Halen's great at one thing and Neil Young's great at another.
And we're back on Stranded, the Australian-Canadian Music Show, and part 3 of the Stranded special on the Church. We've been listening to Marty Willson-Piper, songwriter and guitarist from the Church, from down the line in Cornwall, England. In addition to his large volume of work with the Church over the last 30 years, Marty Willson-Piper has also been part of numerous side projects and solo works. You're about to hear a track from the 2009 solo album by Marty Willson-Piper called Nightjar. But before that, let's listen to the final part of my interview with Marty, where he digs deeper into the creative process of the Church and fills us in on current Church projects. Then going back to the Church, I saw an old video on YouTube. I think you did a Studio 22 interview, and you mentioned that the recording process for the Church is pretty much random. That the magic comes from some random process, and I wonder, upon reflection, is there any golden thread running through all of your recordings that you think might have added some kind of theme to how you do come about things, or would you still to this day say it is pretty much random?
Well, you know, we don't sort of like get excited if somebody comes up with a disco beat. So, you know, the fact is that there is a thread of, and it's almost like we're trying to capture a certain thing. It's like, do you know what it is? We're going into a jungle, a mysterious jungle on a strange planet, and we're trying to capture a beast which nobody's ever seen.
That's excellent.
That's the manifesto.
And for listeners here, I'm really featuring a lot of music that people in Canada may not have kept up with much, Australian music. For the newer listeners, how could you describe how the Church has evolved since the Under the Milky Way period, when people might have been a bit more aware here in North America? How would you say the band has evolved since that period, and what listeners can look forward to checking out if they?
I mean, I think that, you know, we sort of like got sort of away from concise. I mean, we were always sort of a moody pop group in the eyes of the masses. A pop group, but a moody one. But, you know, people who didn't look past the singles wouldn't have known about songs like Is This Where You Live on the first album, and You Talk on the second album, and Travel by Thought on the third album. You know, they wouldn't have known about songs like that. They would have known about Under the Milky Way, or before that, hits like Almost With You, Unguarded Moment, you know, later Metropolis, you know, kind of like interesting singles, but they would never have discovered much about the sprawling, jamming, kind of interesting, moody, exploring side of the church. And I think that what we've tended to do is kind of explore more. You know, we've sort of instead of camping on the surface of the alien planet, we've actually decided to dig into the crust and see what lies below.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, that's a very good description. And I should say to listeners, a lot of the older albums have been re-released. Second Motion Records, that listeners...
Second Motion Records has re-released the first 5 albums, and I've written all the sleeve notes for them, and that was a massive job, by the way.
And is there plans to re-release the next set of 5 as well?
Yeah, we're working on it. It's not that easy to release them. It's expensive to do, and you know, these days people don't seem to want CDs, do they? Well, you know, they do, but it's kind of hard to sell. You know, we don't sell tens of thousands of copies anymore. You know, we need to figure out a way of. We need to figure out what people actually want. The problem is, some people want vinyl, some people want CDs, some people want digipacks, some people want jewel cases, some people want MP3s, some people want MP3 quality music, other people want, you know, FLACs and better quality digital sound. And you know, it used to be that you'd buy a record, and you know, I guess you could buy a cassette instead of a record, but generally people kind of, you know, stuck to buying, you know, vinyl in the 60s and until cassettes came out. Mind you, in the 70s, you know, I've got a gold album on my wall from Starfish in America, and my Australian gold album from Starfish in Australia is a big plaque with a gold album in it saying the church has sold a gold album in Australia. But my American plaque saying gold album is actually a picture of a gold cassette. So, you know, cassettes in the 80s, 70s and 80s in America were absolutely huge because everybody's got a car. So everybody used to buy music on cassette, you know. So there was actually a different format then as well. People weren't saying... It's funny, people talk about quality now, but in maybe they were in the 70s and 80s as well. People were saying, you know, I'm not going to buy the album, I'm going to buy a cassette. You know, it's just nowadays people say, I'm not going to buy the CD, I'm going to get the MP3.
I'm just reminded, actually, that I think I read a quote by Neil Young who said about vinyl, he was really unhappy with CDs, and he said a CD is like pouring a bucket of ice over the top of your head, whereas listening to vinyl is like pouring like warm water slowly trickling over your head. It's just a different feel. And
well, I sit in my archive all day working on stuff when I'm not actually in the studio, listening to records, and I listen to CDs and vinyl, but every time I take off, if I've been listening to vinyl for a few hours and put a CD on, it's kind of like, whoa, oh my God, how harsh is that?
And what are the plans for the near future for the church? Is there a follow-up for album number 23 in the works?
Yeah, well, yeah, there is. I'm going to Australia at the end of October, beginning of November, and we're going to rehearse for a Australian tour. We're playing home bake in Sydney, we're doing a festival in Perth, we're doing a whole lot of theatre gigs throughout Australia and acoustic gigs. We're playing the Future Past Perfect tour there. We're doing some we're going to do some acoustic album shows, playing both the El Momento albums, and we're going to festivals. And when we finish that, we're going to go into January, hopefully, and get into the studio January, February, and try and continue creating whatever the next album project is, with adding to what we've already recorded. We always have something in the can. and we intend to, get into it more in January and February. Sarah and I have a new record coming out very soon, Noctorum, the third Noctorum album, which is a project we do together. Honey Mink Forever, it's called. It's coming out really, really soon. It's just being, the artwork is just being processed.
And you had a recent solo record that came out in 2009 as well.
Yeah, that's right. Nightjar, yeah.
Thinking about studying a diploma, undergrad, or postgrad degree overseas? Or how about volunteering or working abroad? Language travel? Adventure travel? If you answered yes to any or all of these, you should check out the Study and Go Abroad Fair, Tuesday, October 4th from 12 to 6 p.m. at the Vancouver Convention Centre. All attendees will be entered into a grand prize draw. Universities and colleges from around the world will be on hand to talk to interested students. To register and learn more, visit studyandgoabroad.com.
So that brings to an end this part 3 of the Stranded special on the church, this week featuring guitarist Marty Willson-Piper from the band. You just heard a track from his latest solo record, Nightjar. The song is called No One There. You can find more information about the band The Church at thechurchband.net and Marty Willson-Piper at martywillsonpiper.net. That is spelt Willsonpiper. So let's leave with a track from Noctorum, a side project featuring Marty Willson-Piper. We're going to listen to the song called Let Me Tell You a Secret, and it is from the album Offer the Light. Thanks so much for listening. Bye for now.